Hi, everybody. Do you take things too seriously? Are you always letting yourself down? Do you struggle with thinking everyone is judging you too harshly? Are you afraid to fail? Do you overanalyze every move you make, replaying the day in your mind and coming up with new things you did wrong all the time? Do you overcriticize your own looks or voice or choices in life? Do you harbor a lot of negative beliefs about yourself, like you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not cute enough? Are you an extreme overachiever, or do you feel defeated before you even start? Do you wonder if you're smart enough, capable enough, or whatever enough? Do you judge yourself against others, especially the ideal version of the other, i.e., things you see in the media that might not be what the actual person looks like, but more of an enhanced version? Do you give up on challenges quickly, fearing that you won't be successful? Do you fixate on failures long after they're over? Does your self-talk consist of harsh criticism and generalizations? When situations don't go as planned, do you blame yourself? Do you keep commitments to everyone but yourself? Do you lack good self-care habits? Or are your habits too extreme, like over-exercising or not taking care of yourself, for example? Do you beat yourself up when you make a mistake? If so, it could be a sign that you are too hard on yourself. Today on the I Care About You podcast, we're talking about being too hard on yourself and how you can work to give yourself a little bit more grace and understanding and self-compassion. We're all hard on ourselves sometimes. It is hard not to be. We live in a world of high competition. From a young age, we are taught to compete with one another. While casual competition can be healthy, we often see competition becoming too extreme. We have all been in a children's baseball game or soccer match and seen parents taking the competition way too seriously. Through these types of situations and the rhetoric we get in school about not being able to get a good job or provide for people if we don't keep up to a certain standard, take certain classes, do certain things. Through these types of situations and rhetoric, we can develop an extreme beliefs about competition, and it can lead to being too hard on ourselves if we aren't the best at everything. We can take it a feat too hard, and it can easily go from a learning tool to a negative internal belief that we aren't smart enough or strong enough or capable enough or good enough. This can easily be seen when applying for college. The extreme competition to get into a university begins in grade school. We signal to our children that if they don't get good grades, if they aren't exceptional in certain things, if they do not have extracurriculars, if they do not apply to certain internships, take certain classes, they will fail. They won't even get into college. They'll fail before they've even begun. That is one, not true at all. And two, too extreme for children to develop healthy self-beliefs. You can almost bet that if we are a parent putting these ideals on our child, that we are probably too hard on ourselves as well. If you feel that you are too hard on yourself, here are a few things you can do to help retrain yourself to have a more compassionate and loving outlook on yourself. Practice self-compassion. That's number one. Be kind, gentle, and loving to yourself as you would a best friend. When something happens, stop and think to yourself, is this the way I would approach my BFF? What would I do for them right now? What would I say? How would I encourage and support them? Then apply this practice to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Learn to love yourself, flaws and all, just like you would a best friend or sister or brother or sibling or family member or close friend or partner, anyone who's close to you. How you treat them is how you should also treat yourself. Set realistic expectations. Sometimes you will make mistakes or mess up and not win. It's perfectly okay. Many other people are doing the same thing. You are not the only one. Stop and imagine the issues the other people are facing right now. Maybe they're even more dire than what you're facing. 3, apply mindfulness principles. Focus on the present moment. Don't start imagining what could happen in the future as a negative consequence. Don't look at everything by imagining only a negative outcome. Try to be only in the now with what is happening and apply some mindfulness techniques. I've talked about a lot of those in other podcasts. If you want to review those things, there's a lot of good techniques you can put into place that help you get out of that negative self-talk, out of thinking that everything is negative all the time and people are out to get you. Limit your social media consumption. This can be really hard for some folks, but try to avoid comparing yourself to others. If you're going to go on social media, just try not to compare yourself to others. It's been said many times, but sometimes it's just really hard to sink in that what you're seeing on social media isn't people's actual lives. They're little snippets of good times, or they're curated, tell a certain story. They aren't necessarily completely accurate. Here's another good one that I've talked about many times in many other podcasts. Journal your thoughts. Sometimes it's easier to see what you're thinking if you write it down. I'm always amazed at the things I write down when I'm just free flow writing. It really gives you an opportunity to let things you're thinking of but haven't really formed in your brain come out on the paper. Try a journaling exercise where you can only write about topics or situations in your life through a positive lens. Like if you're working on something at work right now, try journaling about it where you can't talk about what's not going right. You can only talk about the situation through a positive lens, through what will go right, through what is going right now, through what you're learning. Find a healer, a coach, or a therapist, depending on what you feel you need. Coaches can be really helpful if you consider the changes you need to make as goals, if you're a goal-setting kind of person. 7, surround yourself with positivity. Be around supportive people. Real positive news stories. Read those. Read and watch feel-good stories. I try to balance any hard news story with a feel-good news story when I'm looking at the news on my feed, because we can so easily get into only looking at the negative news. I was doing that myself when I was having an obsession bleed through about how I see the world, because I was constantly looking at all this negative news feed that I was really drawn to it and got a little bit obsessed with it. And then I started seeing the world through that negative lens, like everything's bad, the whole world's going to hell, going to be fighting for our lives in a few years. And I stopped seeing any good that was out there, even within my own life, like the dog that's sitting on my lap right now. I couldn't really see that because I was so obsessed with watching horrendous things play out on the news, which is a natural disposition, actually. Try not to feel bad about yourself if you're finding yourself there. It's kind of a innate way human beings are to keep themselves safe, is to always be looking for what's negative out there. 8, challenge negative thoughts when you have them. Ask yourself what positive outcome might occur if the situation were neutral, and what would that look like? So whenever you're thinking, like I use this example a lot, you're driving and someone cuts you off and you think they're a jerk and all these negative things about them. What if you thought about something neutral that was happening in that situation? Like they're just trying to get to where they're going. Or what if you actually applied compassion to them? Maybe something horrible happened and they're on their way to the emergency room or something. 9, again, another thing I've done podcasts on, and I'll link a few, use positive affirmations. Those can be really, really helpful. A lot of people think they're a little bit silly, but if you really apply them to your life and work with them, you do start to have a more positive outlook on life. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. What you say, you get. What you give, you get. Give your inner critic a funny name like Negative Nelly, Little Monster, or Clown. Maybe you even want to get a representation of the name to give your inner critic so that you can remind yourself not to take that voice so seriously. What I'm trying to say here is your inner critic, that thing that says you're not good enough, you're ugly, you're not going to do well in this presentation, all those kinds of things that your inner voice tells you, your inner critic, give it a silly name and talk about it in that way, like, oh, there's Negative Nelly again talking to me. It kind of takes away the authority of it. And if you can find a representation of it, like maybe you find a little figurine or something of your little monster or your clown, maybe you give it a name of like a character from anime or manga or something like that, and you buy one of the little figurines and then you put it somewhere where you can see it every day to remind you that that inner critic is just some silly voice in your head. There's no truth to it. 11, avoid the spotlight effect, meaning don't think everything you say and do is seen and heard so closely by everyone else. Many things aren't even noticeable, but we tend to think everyone saw like our sweaty palms, our fidgeting during a presentation, or that everyone is interpreting something we said super critically, or that we look stupid because our shirt was untucked, or a whole host of things. And we can obsess about that. Think about being on a blind date. You are literally worried about everything: your looks, what you say, how you walk, what you order, how you laugh, if you talk too much, if you talk too little, what you say about yourself. This is the spotlight effect. Overthinking what the other person is seeing and interpreting you as. Like I had an example where I gave a presentation at work years ago, and I thought that everyone noticed this one stumble that I had in the presentation over the words. And then when I was debriefing about it later with my supervisor, they were really impressed by my presentation and they didn't even notice that. But I had been obsessing about it for weeks until we debriefed. I had been thinking that I made a total fool of myself in front of everyone, which was not the truth at all. And the same with the blind date. A lot of times you're obsessing about what you're saying and doing and looking and acting like and all these things. But when you're imagining that they are thinking about those things in the same way you are, like, oh, how stupid this person is, or silly, or dumb, or oh my gosh, did you just see what they did? But actually, that person could be interpreting those things as attractive to them in some way. 12, allow yourself some time to feel bad. Set a timer maybe, and when the timer goes off, shift to moving forward again and work on letting it go. Letting things go is huge, but really hard to do and is a huge thing I talk about a lot. Sometimes I think I'm over something and it just comes right back. It's very hard to know when you've let something go completely, but if you can just allow yourself some time to feel bad, sometimes it makes it easier to let it go than if you're just ignoring those bad feelings because they will come out at some time somewhere if you don't let them out. So set like a 30-minute timer. Maybe it's an hour. Maybe you're going to think about this horrible thing that happened every day for a week for an hour, and you are strict in that time frame. And I'm not talking about things like grief, horrible loss, and things like that. That's a whole different process. What I'm talking about is just things you're obsessing about or thinking are not going well for you. Smaller things. Expand your definition of success. Number 13, and what it means to you. Make success not about winning the top prize in the pie making contest, but maybe success is following through and entering the contest and actually making a pie and showing up. Maybe that's success, and it should be. Let go of the fear of failure. This is number 14. Allow yourself to go out of your comfort zone. Learn something new, say something at a meeting, introduce yourself to people you don't know, smile at strangers, and let go of imagining what other people think. 15. Define outcomes more generally. When a situation is such, define outcomes in a general way and not specifically. By fixing a problem at work doesn't get you noticed by the CEO, but it does give you value within your own team. Broaden those positive outcomes. Maybe you aren't the top salesperson of the month, but you make a very valuable connection. Maybe you fixed a problem at work and you didn't get noticed by your CEO, but you gained more value for your team. And when you did that down the road, you got the promotion, you got that big prize because you proved that you could do what needed to be done when you were in a lower level position. Stop thinking of just the top prize, the big prize, and start broadening your idea of what success is and what failure is. And that failure is really not failure. It's more of a place to learn, or when things don't go right, how you learn to pivot or be resilient, a host of things like that. It's not necessarily a failure. And even when you have a big whopping failure, I've had quite a few of those in my life. Looking back on them now, I see them more as incredible opportunities I didn't realize at the time that really opened the door to things that were much more incredible and enriching. But I wouldn't probably have gone there had I not had the quote unquote failure. 16, celebrate success, large and small. This is a big one. It helps you to retrain your brain away from the narrow path of success that you mistakenly thought was right to a wider, more expansive highway where many wonderful things can happen. It also helps cultivate happiness and fulfillment. Redefine success in terms of smaller, more obtainable goals. This is very similar to what I talked about earlier. Instead of having a lofty goal, success might be putting yourself out there. Over time, small goals can lead to big ones. For example, you have goals around being a solid and reliable team member and leader, and that might lead you to the bigger goal of promotion. Or you have smaller goals of making friends and deepening connections, and you might achieve something larger, which is finding a partner. Lots of things can happen. 18, develop good self-care practices. Maybe it's meditation or exercise or face mask while you watch your favorite TV show. Maybe it's going to bed early when you feel tired, or taking the time to read, even in broad daylight. Develop some self-care practices so that you can show yourself that you care about you. 19, go on a date with yourself one time per month. I actually got this from a really great book that I read a long time ago and recently reread that talked about once a week going on a date with yourself, an artist date. It was called The Artist's Way is the book, and I'll put it in the description. But I'm saying try to do that once a month, because maybe once a week is hard to achieve. Do exactly what you want to do. Find places to seek inspiration. Maybe you go on a hike in your favorite park, or you window shop after going to your favorite coffee place. Do something just for yourself, by yourself, with yourself, for yourself, once a month. It doesn't have to be all day. It could be an hour, half an hour, whatever works for you. And 20, lastly, it's okay to be proud of yourself. It doesn't mean that you be conceited or self-centered, but it is completely okay for you to be proud of yourself. That is part of celebrating your achievements. Many of us, myself included, were taught by society that pride is not always a good thing. And that can be true. But it doesn't mean you can't smile at yourself, pat yourself on the back, and say, job well done to yourself. You can celebrate yourself as long as you stay away from being stuck up, conceited, or self-absorbed, and developing a perception that you are better than others. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about being proud of yourself when you accomplish something. It's part of that whole celebration component. So there you have it, 20 ways you can curb the need to be too hard or too critical of yourself. I hope some of these work for you. And remember, change takes time. Keep going. If you stop, it's okay. Just start again. If you fall back into old habits, catch yourself and shift. You can do this. I believe in you. I support you and I love you. And you've got this. I know you do. So take good care, my friends.